Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Rachel Lewis. I am Administrator of CAD and Mapping Services. I took on this role about 2 years ago, and Mark McLeod took on, the CAD Manager about a year ago. So the two of us have been working to kind of get caught up on current issues that we've had and how to fix those issues, and developing some initiatives for moving us forward and moving ODOT forward. One of ODOT's initiatives coming up is going to be moving us into a 3D world of design and modeling. And so the things we are going to start doing this year is going to start gearing us up to move us in that direction. One of the issues that we recognized over this last year is that CAD has kind of lost its communication with other CAD users, not only at ODOT, but also in the consultant world. There used to be a lot of meetings and updates, and those haven't happened in a while. So that was our goal for this past year, was to start developing better communications. We have updated the website. We have developed better ways to push out updates. This past year, we've had a kind of a rebirth of the CAD group internally, and Mark has held some meetings with the CAD groups in the districts. And so now we are moving on to communicating better with the consultants with this kickoff meeting. We also have established a CAD mapping and surveying track at OTEC this year. So we'll have some CAD stuff going on at OTEC. And I think we are going to be trying to look at items such as project-wise. Bentley made an announcement last week that they have paired up with Trimble to make some improvements with the iModel and with the TBC. They're project-wise, and they've got some cool things going on now together. Does anyone have any questions before we get started? Any general questions for myself? I'm not going to be able to stick around today. I have some other meetings. Nothing? With that, today our speakers are Mark McLeod, the CAD manager. We've got Jack Kerstetter. I'm not sure if he's speaking. Are you speaking today? Are you just managing this? And then we have Eric Thomas, so I think everyone probably knows. He's been a staple at ODOT for a long time. We brought him back as a consultant. And with that, I think we're going to be talking about, John Dursick's going to speak as well. And then Greg Grombach up here has been our webmaster and updating the website for us. So if you guys have any website issues, please let him know. And with that, I'll let you guys start your meeting.
Everybody hear me in the back there? Okay? Yeah. First of all, welcome. This is something that we used to do years ago, and it just kind of fell by the wayside. Actually, first of all, anybody that's not familiar with the facilities, you walk out the door here and make a right, go straight. That's the cafeteria. We're going to break for lunch around 11:30. So you can just head that way if you want to grab some food. We're going to have about an hour for lunch, so you can leave the site if you want to. I think there's some fast food down the street here. And then also restrooms down the hall and then to the left. So if you're not familiar with the facilities. Anyways, welcome. Like I said, this is something that ODOT used to do a few years ago. It's something that we've been wanting to kind of restart. Previously, it was called GMUG. GMUG was the GeoPack Microstation Users Group. And I kind of went back and looked at previous meetings to try to find when the last time we had one. And I was talking to Eric actually about this morning, and the last documented meeting we had was July of 2011. And I guess it was just a Bentley meeting at one point. They basically did an overview of open roads, and it was pretty new technology back then. So this is kind of a reboot of the GMUG. And it gives us a chance to kind of come together with the consultants, talk about new technology, and then anytime you talk about new technology, we're talking about possible new standards with the software, such as Bentley Open Roads, which Eric will talk about this afternoon. That's going to be the highlight. Everybody's probably here for that. So. And then it also gives us a chance to talk about other CAD-related topics, such as the GenSum spreadsheet. Now, I did want to talk about the agenda. We'll get into that here real quick. But also, getting back to the reboot, 2 meetings per year is what we're looking at. We're looking at a schedule of like the spring for the first meeting, probably here at central office, and then a fall meeting, and we're going to try to couple that with OTEC, and that's kind of our first initial one is going to be this year that Rachel had mentioned. So there's going to be like a CAD mapping track. So we've got a couple different workshops at OTEC this year. Just kind of going over the agenda briefly. We got introductions in the morning. We're going to talk about the ODOT CADD website that we've been working on to update, and then some of the support services that we offer. And then we're going to get into some of the future concepts that we are kind of researching right now in the works for the ODOT CADD standards. And then we're going to get into John Dursick's going to do a presentation on the GenSum spreadsheet. That was one thing. If you haven't looked at the agenda, if you printed one out and brought it with you, there's not a notation for the CPD credits on it. If you get an agenda at the check-in, it'll have the CPD credits. We usually offer that for any meetings and stuff. So just as a reminder, if you didn't get one, they have them up front. And John's going to do a presentation on the GenSum Ashore spreadsheet, which is relatively new. This is something we just initiated here, I don't know, probably 3 months ago, I think. And that was it was initially started by Office of Estimating. And then the CAD section actually got involved to kind of help develop that. But John's here for that. Originally, we had Bentley coming in. Many of you know probably Don Lee. He actually worked for MS Consultants and then left and went to work for Bentley. He was actually in our section for a time as a consultant working with us. And he was supposed to speak, but I guess he's going to be in Texas DOT this week doing some training. So he was unable to make it. So we got John that's going to be filling in there for that hour. As far as the open roads overview, Eric has kind of restructured his thing in the afternoon to kind of touch on that, talk about it, talk about the concept that Bentley is going forward with this new technology, along with some of the survey standards that we've already developed in-house. We'll break for lunch at 11:30, and we'll go to 12:30 for lunch. And then in the afternoon, I'll hand it over to Eric, and he'll be the presenter for basically the remainder of the day. We can talk about some of the standards that we've been developing for the Open Roads Survey, and then touch on some of the design stuff that we're working on. And then at 2:30, we'll do a short Q&A session. This is pretty open format. We'll probably do Q&As as we move forward through the day. But we wanted to kind of put something aside at the end of the day for any optional questions. And then, as I said before, the CPD credits note on the current agenda. If you didn't receive one, just make sure you pick one up so you get that. That was something we've always kind of offered in previous GMUG meetings was CPDs. Office CAD Mapping Services. This is something that was formed, it's been a few years ago. And Rachel Lewis, she's the administrator of the office. She opened a meeting there earlier. It used to be Aero Engineering. I don't know if some of you may remember Aero Engineering. It was over on the east side of 70 there. And then we had the Office of Production, which CAD was actually part of the Office of Production at the time. And then with some restructuring the agency, they decided that production at central office, they were going to basically disband, put some of that work out to the districts. And then Aero Engineering actually moved to central office in the department where production did reside, and then CAD was basically absorbed, and CAD mapping services was formed. We have 3 sections within CAD mapping services. We have a mapping LiDAR section, which is essentially the old aero engineering. Then we have CAD services, which is our section for CAD support. And then we have survey services or survey support that do all the support for survey throughout the districts, equipment, purchasing, stuff like that, control setups, terrestrial scanning, things like that. As Rachel mentioned, I'm Mark McLeod. I'm the CAD manager here. I was appointed CAD manager actually almost a year ago, August. I do microstation support, geopack support, CAD, and some of the CAD standards manual. I actually came from District 5. I've got about 24 years of experience in ODOT. I was the CAD manager at the district when we had CAD managers at the districts. Then I made the move to Columbus about 3 years ago. And Dan Ranke was actually the CAD manager. He's here today at the time. And then Dan went on to greener pastures, and then I was made CAD manager. So, Anita Cheek, right there in the front row. She's our L&D Volume 3 expert. So if you have a question about L&D Volume 3, she is the person. She takes care of the updates and coordinates all the updates with all the other offices for that. Also, part of that is the plan development process, the PDP process. I know she's actually been working some with that, too, to try to get some duplication between one and the other kind of streamlined a little bit. And then the CAD standards manual, she's, if something needs changed, I usually give it to her. And she makes the changes, like the web link, for instance. We have to go back through and update all of our web links because we updated our website. And then MicroStation 3D modeling support. She's done all of the 3D cell libraries that we have for MicroStation right now. I don't know if it's basically in the CAD standards. If you look, we have actually a 3D cell library. And there's quite a few things in there. One of the things that we're actually working with right now is Bentley. All of our catch basins that we have that are 3D catch basins, we're working with Bentley right now to get that incorporated with the suite of products. For those of you who are familiar with that, I don't know if you've heard that term or not. SUE is subsurface utility engineering, and SUE is subsurface utility design and analysis, which SUE exists at this point. SUDA does not, but that's something that Bentley is going to be working on. But we've been kind of partnering with them. Robert Garrett at Bentley, we actually sent him some of our cell libraries, and he's actually taken that and already done some stuff with it, hasn't he? Graham Grumbach, down here in the front, he's our web guy, the SharePoint guru. He does our website development, some MicroStation support, and then some of our Bentley Learn support, so for our user accounts, creating user accounts, things like that. And then something else we haven't really talked about, this is something new that we're kind of leveraging, is the Bentley communities. We actually have a community on Bentley's websites for Ohio DOT. This was something we kind of put up there and posted some training videos and some other things, and then we haven't really done much with it, but this is something that we want to try to leverage. Some of the forums, things like that. We're going to try to monitor as best we can, posting questions and things like that. But Greg will be the person, kind of the point person for that. So all the website issues we've had lately, he's the man. Jack Kerstetter. I didn't have a slide big enough for Jack. And I was limiting to 4 bullet points per person, so Jack he's our hardware support person. He's kind of our IT guru. Hardware support, software support, our plotting support. So he takes care of our iPlot servers through our infrastructure, and then VB application support. And I could probably put another 10 bullet points on there. But anyways, He's kind of our go-to guy if we have problems. Licensing, any issues like that, iPlot configurations. He's also been involved with the PDF printing that we're kind of looking at right now with Print Organizer, and we'll touch on that a little bit later. We have actually had a lean group formed for PDF file submissions. Terry Sillick, he's in the back. Terry. She actually joined our group here recently. She was part of production initially, and then moved to District 6, and then here, I don't know, how long has it been, Terry? About a month or so? 2 months? Yeah, she actually came back and joined our section. She's helping us with our microstation support. She's doing all of our standard drawing updates and cell library updates in accordance with the standards that we have. She's been kind of ongoing working with that. She's also going to be kind of the point person for some of the CAD application support that we're going to have. And I've just put a little note there, auto turn and guide sign, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. We actually don't use auto turn internally right now, but there's a reason for that we're looking at it. And then also some of the special CAD projects that we have that come into our section that necessarily don't have a home. One of those being aviation has all the airports in CAD drawings right now, and none of it's geo-referenced. And they're trying to utilize those geo-referenced CAD drawings with notebooks or tablets so they can go out in the field and do payment inventory and just payment reporting on all the airports. So we're in the process of trying to take all those drawings, get them geo-referenced in MicroStation so they can carry that forward to their software so they can go out there and use it in the field. Eric Thomas needs no introduction. He's been with, he retired from ODOT, 30 years of service in. He was part of the CAD section for a very, very long time. I remember calling Eric numerous times in the district to fix some criteria files or ask for criteria files being created for certain things that we have. But Eric is actually back with us as a consultant. He was hired back on a 2-year contract. He will be working on the open roads development as ODOT moves forward. This will be survey, which we've actually pretty much rolled out. We have training files. We don't have anything published yet on the website for the survey training. That's something we're going to try to get done here probably in the next week. We have all of our training files, seed files, documentation that we've done. All the surveyors within ODOT have already been trained. That was done back in, is that March or April, I think? Yeah. And we're kind of making our way around the districts right now, doing site visits, talking to the survey operations managers, getting the software installed, getting the computers kind of up to speed. We've had some hiccups with IT section. There's some things going on there, some turmoil there, but we're actually working with the districts now to try to better support them and help with the software. Also, GeoPack, the current GeoPack version, he will continue to support that. That's something that we're definitely going to continue to do. We're probably not going to be doing much enhancements to it since Open Roads has been released for over a year now. This is something that we're focused on right now because this is the new technology. So moving forward, any development that's going to be done will probably be in Open Roads. And then, as many of you know, Eric has wrote quite a few VBA applications for ODOT in the past. That's something that we want to continue to support. However, there are a few things that we're looking at doing, and we'll talk about that a little bit later in the presentation. So the ODOT CAD Services website update. If you've been to the old site, and I've got links in the PowerPoint. We'll post the PowerPoint for today that we have on our website so you can go back and refer to it if you like. The old website was not very organized. We had a lot of stuff over here on the side panel, and just everything just kind of was separated out. We had the old CAD discussion board that was something that we had for years, and it never really took off. At one point it did, but then it kind of fizzled out, and people really didn't use it. We still had a link for that out there. You could go back and look at some of the things that people had posted. The GenZum VBA app with the spreadsheet, we actually had that link straight from the website. That was something that we kind of worked with Office of Estimating. They're kind of piggybacking off of our link to get to the file. Auto Table, which is KDIG, as part of that, doing spreadsheets, working in spreadsheets and MicroStation, things like that. CAD events, standards manual, GeoPack download. So as you can see, we just really didn't have a very good structure. And, we even had V8i development on there. V8i has been out for quite a few years. So we realized that there was something that we needed to do with this to try to make it a little more user-friendly. And, I talked to a few consultants. I said, hey, what do you take a look at this. In fact, as I mentioned, Don Lee was in our section, and he had worked for a consultant previously. And I told him, I said, take a look at this and give me some ideas because I want to do something. So Don kind of, took a look at it and thought, well, maybe we should compartmentalize certain things like software, training, things like that, information, support. We kind of got together and talked about it as a group and had an initial concept and then just kind of decided, let's go ahead and do something. Let's do something with the website. Let's make a new website. So I don't know if anybody's been to it yet. This is the new site. This is our CAD services site. Now, what we've done, we piggybacked off of the CAD mapping services website and just created a whole new subsite. So we have it kind of broke down, information, standards, training, and then support. Now, on this main page here, we got a little mission statement. This was something that we actually did a few years ago, and we wanted to just kind of put that out there on our main page. And then we have our announcements on here for our CAD standard supplemental updates, and then it talks about our revision history. We just had the supplemental update yesterday that went out, and then the revision history links. And then any type of announcements we have, like the consultant users group meeting, we wanted to put that out there. And unfortunately, due to technical difficulties, we do not have a webcast. Thank you, Greg, for putting that up there. And then agenda, and then our RSVP form, which initially the RSVP didn't really work so well. We had some issues with that, but we got it worked out, and hopefully that'll work better the next time we have a meeting for people that want to sign up. Just kind of working down through here, information. This is something we wanted to kind of put together. Research, we haven't populated yet. Obviously, it's coming soon. This is something that we thought about. We wanted to kind of give people an idea of what we're working on, what current technologies we're working on, things that we're looking at doing. I've had a lot of emails come in and say, hey, what are you guys doing? What are you working on? So we wanted to take that and put it in an area on the website to kind of just give an overview of things that ODOT is looking at when it comes to CAD. And then an FAQ section for we get emails, people ask questions, and then I get the same email a week later that's the same question, and it gets pretty redundant, so we thought, you know what, let's just make a section for frequently asked questions. So we've got a space there. Obviously, we haven't populated that yet, but that's something that we're going to continue or start to do. And then this was one that I never really thought about it, but for some of the new engineers, getting into the technology, acronyms is a big thing. You start talking about LIDAR and AASHTO and some of the other ones, CAD, CAM, there's a lot of acronyms out there. And we actually have a lot of young engineers, EITs, that come in the building. We start throwing these acronyms around like, what is that? And so we wanted to kind of, publish something that kind of give you an idea, hey, what is, FTP? Various things, technology that we work in every day that a lot of people, that are young coming into the industry don't necessarily know. So this is something that we wanted to put together, and this is something that this is going to be an ongoing thing. We're going to probably, update this accordingly, publish it. But as you can see, there's a lot in there. CAD standards. This is actually where the manuals and the files are located. This is something that we wanted to kind of, like I said before, compartmentalize. We have the manuals here. So we have the manual without appendices, we have the manual with appendices, and then we have the appendices broke out. How many people download just Appendix A? That's not what we thought. This is going to change. We're going to do the entire CAD manual with appendix, and that's it. We're not going to have to manage 8 different files or however many there are. We want to do one PDF for the entire CAD manual because that's usually what people want. So this is going to be streamlined a little bit. Then we have some links here to some of the other things as well off of this page. Files. This is basically a compiled version of all the other links that we had, so like MicroStation downloads, GeoPack downloads, the GenSum download. We basically put everything in one area. So if you go here, you'll see everything kind of in order. This is the latest, this being the latest, the GeoPack Survey, Select Series 3 standards, document and files, and then the complete GeoPack standards, Select Series 2 in a zip file, individual GeoPack road standards, kind of selected out here, individual files. Same thing with survey standards. And then our complete MicroStation standards, and then individual MicroStation standards broke down into separate pages. This was something we had on the old site. We really weren't sure how we were going to handle it, and we wanted to get the site live, so we decided we were just going to move everything and put it under sub-pages, and then this is going to be restructured probably at a later date. And then StormCAD was some standards that we actually put out. There was a presentation at OTEC last year. Somebody from, who was it, Hydraulics? Oh yeah, Holly did a presentation on StormCAD last year at OTEC, and these were the standards for those. This is something else that we want to try to continue to support. At some point, we'd like to have a staff member that's strictly hydraulics in the section that can just do hydraulic type standards for all the products that we support. This is something that is going to be looked at here in the coming probably months or years. This is something that we would like to have. And then the GenSum Excel spreadsheet, this is the link here. We actually have a link from there to Estimating's website. Many of you probably visited this website, and then the link for the Excel GenSum there is actually a link from our page. So just one-stop kind of shop for all the downloads for files. And then under the standards, also revision history, kind of a running revision history for our ODOT CADD standards. So we put any supplemental updates out there, and then the quarterly updates, and then at the end of the year, it'll be archived, and it'll be basically an annual revision history of the entire standards. Then we have the CAD standards manual down here. Hold on, I'm sorry, that's the revision history. Yeah, there's the archive. And then we wanted to kind of break down the training, so we actually put it in its own section. GeoPack V8i Select Series 2, here's our Road 1, Road 2 course and class files. Survey, Select Series 2, course files and guide. I had mentioned earlier, we have done the GeoPack Open Road Survey training. We actually have the training files and the guide. We haven't posted it yet. Eric's going to talk about that this afternoon. He's going to show kind of what we've done, the configuration we have set up for it, and then that'll be something that gets posted here probably, like I said, in the next week or so. Roadway Designer. This was something that we initially had training files and training guide for, but we never really implemented it at ODOT. We had classes on it, and I remember Eric actually had taught a class, and we had 1 or 2 people from the districts attend the class. And it was a one-day class, and I'll never forget it. I walked out of there, my head spinning, going, oh, my God, this is way different than what I'm used to with criteria files. You know, template building, things like that, dealing with 3D surfaces. I mean, there was a lot. And, you know, it was like crammed into one day. We actually have some videos there, too, talking about some of the exercises. Roadway Designer never really took off at ODOT. I'm not really sure why. I think it was more or less, we knew the technology was there, and we were still kind of in the process of doing the Geopack Select Series 2 and getting it, you know, ingrained in people and how to use it. And we knew that Open Roads at some point was going to come along. Bentley had already been talking about it, and we just weren't, I guess, really ready to adopt it at that point. LiDAR, some of the LiDAR classes we have, and then the OSIP tile locations if you're using OSIP data. We have DGN files set up for those. And then Site, which is another product that will probably eventually take off the website itself. Bentley has already said at some point Site will no longer be supported because essentially what they're doing is they're taking Site, Corridor Modeler, and Roadway Designer, and they're incorporating it all into Open Roads as tools. And Eric will talk about that this afternoon. Training videos. This is some of the videos that we have. Some of the VBA applications that Eric's done videos for. We'll probably, I don't know if we'll update any of these videos. It just depends on whether the VBAs are continuing to be supported or not. That's one thing that is up in the air right now, and I want to talk about that in a little bit. And then we have some Roadway Designer training videos as well here. Events, we figured that would be a good location to put under training. This is where we'll probably do our announcements for the events. Like I said, this is the initial release. This website may be tweaked over time. We feel like it's in a fairly good format at this point, but there may be changes slightly. One of the changes actually recently, I probably forgot to note, the URL initially was very long. We had CAD, and then it was %20 because we had a space, and then it was services, and then %20, and then home, and it was very long. So we went back and actually updated the URL link, so now it's just CAD underbar services. So if you created a bookmark initially, you might want to go back and update that bookmark link. And then this is the RSVP form that we had for the event, so you could go in and sign up for the event. And then I'm going to talk about that support down here in just a minute. So that's kind of the before and after for the website. Now, support services. In the old website, we had a location for it, but it wasn't current on the staff, who they were, what their contact information was. So that's something we wanted to kind of update. You know, the section, get the contact information out there, you know, let the consultants know who's supporting what within ODOT. Something else that we wanted to add, current versions of ODOT CAD software. We get questions, hey, what version of MicroStation are you guys running? Select Series 3, what version of Select Series 2 MicroStation are you running? Well, you know, we didn't have that information out there, so we wanted to make that available. We thought that, you know, for consultants that are looking, hey, you know, do we upgrade, do we not upgrade? You know, if we're looking at StormCAD, what version are you guys running? You know, various different software packages that we use within ODOT, you know, that maybe you're looking at purchasing. We wanted to kind of get that information out there. Some support links that we put on the website, and then the service request form. This is something it's been out there, but we really didn't make it, I guess, well known. And that's part of the reason why we're having this meeting, is we wanted to kind of get people involved and let them know, hey, there is a service request form that you can actually submit either a question or a service request. And then something that we're actually leveraging internally, IT has a help desk software that we're actually using now as part of our CAD support ticketing. So it's called IT Now, and it's basically our internal tracking for support calls or support requests. And I'll touch on that briefly. So down here at the bottom under support, we've got our contact information. This has been updated. All of the phone numbers for everybody I mentioned earlier. A software list of all the current versions of software that we're currently running, whether it be Select Series 2 or 3, MicroStation, GeoPack, the cart, Auto Table, iPlot, just various things. We actually, Gint. We actually have somebody here from Geotech. Where you at, Brian? Oh, there you are. Storm CAD versions and some of the other software, even our Windows Enterprise version that we're using. We need to put Office on there. Our Office suite. We need to make a note of that. Because I get that all the time. What spreadsheet? What are you guys using? Well, 2010 right now, but we're actually getting ready to go to 13 cloud. And then we have some links, support links that we have here. We have the Bentley link, Knucklehead's Guide to GeoPack, the Jensen Ashtor spreadsheet link to Estimating's website. And then here's the Bentley Communities. This is something that we added and I briefly talked about. This is a community that has a forum for general GeoPack, maybe geotech questions, MicroStation, just various things. We actually also have put some of our standards file downloads out there. This is just going to be kind of another avenue for kind of advertising support for training videos and various things. This is something we want to try to leverage, but it's new. It's pretty new for us, so this is going to be kind of an ongoing thing. And then the service request form. This is our external ticketing system. We don't have a way to link IT Now internally with externals. Well, we do, but then how's that work, Jack? You have to sign up for an account. Yeah, we don't have that enabled yet, but you have to have an account for something to access the internal support ticketing system. So what we've come up with is basically a simple form. This is something we had before. Just general questions, MicroStation version, GeoPack version, just some contact information, and then down the bottom, in the comments field, hey, what problem you have, and what's the what software, seed file problem, whatever. Here you submit, and then it sends an email form to the group, and everybody gets it, and then we actually take that and we insert it into our IT Now systems for tracking. So we can actually assign it to different people. So if it's a plotting issue, we'll put it in and I'll assign it to Jack. If it's maybe an open roads issue, we'll put it in and assign it to Eric. And that way it kind of gets filtered through the group and gets assigned to who needs to have it. That's kind of the breakdown of the website. ODOT STD is something that's been around for quite a long time. I drive ODOT STD. That's kind of that's been our directory standard. In moving forward with open roads, we looked at some of the configurations that we're going to have to possibly develop, and we took a long look at it and we thought, if we're going to be doing this, it might be something that we want to take a good hard look at and possibly redevelop or redesign the actual folder structure for ODOT STD. So we wanted to update the current CAD standards folder structure. We also wanted to try to compartmentalize application configurations and standards, which we had that to some degree, but when we started the Open Roads implementation, we actually created an Open Roads folder, and then I think it kind of confused people because they thought Open Roads was a separate product when it's really not. It's a technology. It's actually part of GeoPack. So we kind of went around and around, and what we've come up with, we feel, is a good footprint for starting for the new technology moving forward. We also created an ODOT group for project and support tools. That was something that we looked at, and we had a lot of the ODOT applications were just kind of scattered throughout the directory structure, and we wanted to try to put it all under one area. So a user could go and say, I want to go to support tools, or I want to go to project tools, or something that was relative to ODOT, like the GenSum. Where is it located under ODOT STD? If you're downloading the configuration zip file for all the standards, where is it located? Well, we didn't really have that well documented, so this is something we wanted to kind of just make a little more user-friendly. And then in working forward and moving forward with Select Series 3 and Open Roads, and talking to Bentley, their big push is start using DGN Lives for all your configurations. So we found ourselves creating DGN Lives and DGN Lives and DGN Lives for a lot of the various things like survey features. We have a DGN library for that now. We have a level DGN library, the ODOT menu DGN library. We found ourselves creating more DGN libraries as we move forward, so we thought, well, this is going to be a better way as moving forward, creating those files and putting them into a folder structure. Why not take a look at ODOT STD and just redesign it? So the current ODOT STD config, and this is like snooze. We have a config file on the local C drive. Right now, it's V8I, ODOT Standards CFG. And that's under a Bentley subfolder, and it sets all the ODOT STD variables for us. Then we're piggybacking off of a PCF file, which is on a network drive, if you have a network drive, with the site config as ODOT V8I PCF. So all this, we're using a PCF file for our site configuration variables. User level configuration, we have a UCF, ODOT V8I, and then a default user config, which in that config file, there's a variable that's set that's basically ODOT V8I. We have 3 folders under ODOT STD. We have a projects folder, which is basically our site configs. We have a site config for V8I. We actually have one now for Select Series 3. We even have one for Open Roads. And then we have a subfolder for version 7, which I'm not sure how much longer that is going to be supported because obviously version 7 has been gone for a while. And then we have the V8I STD folder, which here, I know that might be a little hard to see there. And in this, we have like KDIG standards, cell libraries, Storm CAD, BBA applications, general notes, GeoPack, and then we also have that inroads thing separated out there. We realized that we wanted to try to clean that up a little bit, especially moving forward with Open Roads. And I don't know, this may not pertain to the consultants much, but we also had a separate folder called V8I GSTD, and if you ever looked at config files, it's a variable set that basically points to a local set of standards. So if you had your own CAD standards that you wanted to kind of inject into the ODOT standards, this was like the variable you could use. Now this could be changed and updated, but essentially what the districts use it for, our district offices use it for, is like iPlot configurations, PLT configs, pin tables, customized user config files. So ODOT STD, we're looking at restructuring it and calling it ODOT CAD. So instead of iDrive, ODOT STD, ODOT CAD. We're going to be moving away from PCF site configs and moving towards a CFG for our site config. So we're going to have a redirect on the C drive that's going to either go to a local set of standards, which would be ODOT CAD, or a networked version of the ODOT CAD standards. And then within that, all of our variables are going to be set. So if you have your own network pathing, your own structure that you like to use in a consulting realm, all you got to do is go to this file and change those paths. All the variables are carried forward. That was something that we saw that a lot of consultants, maybe they used ours, maybe they didn't, maybe it was a hybrid of what we used. And we didn't really give a good way for that to be tweaked. So we wanted to kind of add those variables and allow those folders to be configured kind of on the fly. The ODOT site V8I SS3 config is basically going to be our site config now. That's actually changed quite a bit. We'll touch on that here in a little bit. User level configurations. Bentley Select Series 3, Bentley SS3 is kind of what we're looking at. We wanted to kind of move forward, and we realized that there's going to be Select Series 3, possibly Select Series 4, or Open Roads. So we wanted to kind of tie that to a version. So if moving forward that needed to change, we could change it. And that is all configured within the redirect. So you can actually call that anything you want, and it carries forward in the configs. We've also broken down the user configurations a little bit further. We actually have a folder now for function keys. That was a big thing for users. They like to create their own function keys, but everything was stored in one folder. So you had function keys, you had button assignments, you had all these files just amassed in the home directory. So we wanted to kind of break those down a little bit. And we even allowed for a custom GUI. So if your users like to do like custom tool palettes or menus or things like that, they actually had a separate storage area for them. And then also preferences, user preferences, which is another big thing. Bentley's actually using XML files now for like the panel layouts, the toolbox layouts, things like that. That's been moving forward with Select Series 3 MicroStation. There's a lot more config files than there have been in the past. So we wanted to kind of break those down into separate folders. So the new folder structure, ODOT CADD, we've got 3 folders: local, projects, and standards. Local, we wanted to try to take the idea of the V8I GSTD, which is a completely separate folder structure for localized standards, and actually incorporate them into one folder. So we weren't dealing with 2 folders. We were going to have one folder structure. So the local folder is going to basically take care of any local CAD standards that you might have, such as the iPlot, the LT configs, or pin tables that you may have done any customization or tweaking to as part of the ODOT CAD standards. Projects folder. This is something new that we're going to kind of embrace and moving forward. In the past, we used PCF files for site configs. And with Open Roads, we saw a need for project-specific settings. One of the main reasons was georeferencing data, grid to ground, ground to grid, dealing with different scale factors. We have North Zone, South Zone, different seed files for geographic coordinate systems. So some districts are using grid, some districts are using ground. If we have a project on the grid that we want to take to ground, this will make it a lot easier. In the PCF, we'll have all the project-specific config files, and that'll just carry forward for the entire project. Eric will actually, we'll get into that quite a bit now. Same thing, ODOT CAD, and then standards. It's pretty much broke down the same way as ODOT STD was. We wanted to, like I said, compartmentalize things like Gint. We actually use Gint internally. We don't really have any config files set up for that right now. Actually, do we, Brian? Okay. That's something that we wanted to have a place if we decide to develop that maybe for future reference. We could have some area to put that stuff. StormCAD, Sue, if we do start developing some of the self-service utility stuff with the Bentley products. Trimble. We are a Trimble house. We wanted to have a place if we had any specific configurations like the Trimble feature code list for the data collectors or things like that. We could actually put that under a folder where we thought it made sense. And then ODOT. The ODOT folder was going to house like all project-specific tools, things like that. The GenSum, VBA, various things like that. So it's very similar to what we had before, just a little more restructured. Quarterly ODOT CAD standards update. As part of the DRC, the DRC actually went to a biannual update, so they only update it twice. And we felt like it wasn't something that we really wanted to do every 6 months biannually. We just had too many updates that we were pushing out. So we maintain the quarterly updates. The DRC, when it gets updated the second quarter, we'll have the CAD standards as part of that. And then the fourth quarter, but then the other quarters are just going to be CAD standards. Right now, we're looking at Q1 is going to be January, Q2 April, Q3 July, and Q4 October. This is something that I wanted to do for a really long time, and I sat down and, like I said, Don Lee from Bentley had joined our group, and I had talked to him about this, and this is something that we wanted to try to get something put together to make it easier for the consultants to take our standards and put it on a computer and walk away and not have to worry about, okay, where are the config files? Where do they go? How do we set this up to get it to work with the ODOT CAD standards? So we come up with an installation package, which is a self-executable, and it installs like any other piece of software. So you run it on your computer, and you're going to get some options. You're going to get a local configuration. You're going to get a client configuration. You're going to get a network configuration. So if you want, and you have a laptop, and you want to have it set up with just a localized set of standards, you can run the installation package, select local. It configures your laptop for local settings, and it installs all the CAD standards for you. Another option would be client. If you have your CAD standards already located on the server and you just want to configure the client to point to those standards, you can run that, tell it client, tell it where your standards are on the network, and then it configures your settings for you. Server, if you're the CAD manager at the consulting firm and you want to update the CAD standards, you can run the server version of the executable, tell it to point to your network drive, and it pushes those files out. Initially, we're going to have a complete executable for all the standards. And then we're actually going to go to a quarterly patching system. So you actually patch your standards. So instead of doing the entire executable to inject all the CAD standards, it'll just be a patching mechanism. So you'll be able to double-click on the executable, and it may only be 50 megabytes for whatever the updates were. It'll just push those as a patch to your current standards, and then that's it. No more downloading the entire zip file, unzipping it to a location, figuring out which CAD standards have been updated, and then taking those and copying them over. We realized that was, it was cumbersome. Besides, how many zip files do we have? Over 100 zip files that we kind of manage and take care of, which is a lot. We thought, we need to come up with a better way of supplying the standards externally. So this is kind of what we come up with. The first initial release of this will be in October of this year. So October, along with the full standard download zip file, we'll have our first executable that you'll be able to run as an installation package. And Jack will definitely have the documentation ready for that. So, without further ado, let's take a look at that installation package. So it's going to be, like I said, an executable. There'll be a setup, ODOT CAD. You'll run it. You'll get the little splash screen there for ODOT CAD standards. Yeah, this is something it was initial. We're going to probably tie maybe a year and maybe even a quarter to it at some point when we do the patching mechanism. And it's just like any other software package. You're just going to get your little splash screen here for your installation program. Next, and then we're actually going to have the revision history in the dialog as soon as you start the installation process. So you can actually go through and actually look at the revision history before it's installed. And then here's your selection. You'll either do a local for a complete standalone install. You can do a client, which is a limited local configuration. So what it does, like I said, it configures your local machine to point to a server somewhere with the standards. That's a prerequisite to the server install. So you'll actually be able to select what you want to do. Server enables the content to be centralized for access. Go local here. And you're going to get this little licensing thing. And then it's going to default to that ODOT CAD folder we talked about for the new folder structure. And it's going to say, this doesn't exist. Yes, we're going to create it, and we're going to start. And you'll notice that you'll see some cell libraries. We've put everything, the 3D cell libraries, all the VBA applications. The executable, we wanted to try to find a happy medium for the file size because right now the executable is almost 900 megabytes. That's how many files we have. This may be tweaked at some point. What we thought about doing is maybe just doing an executable for like the minimum standards and then maybe doing a patch for like the county DGN maps that we have available or the 3D cell libraries that we have available, just various things. So this is something that we haven't quite fine-tuned. We're going to be working on that before the October release. But initially, it just may be everything. You'll notice there's some PDFs that's actually doing training files as well. So that's actually putting some of the training files, documentation for like our criteria files for Select Series 2, things like that. GGF, anybody? Chris knows what that is. Geoid model. We actually have a custom clipped geoid model for the Trimble stuff. So if you have a Trimble data collector and you want the geoid model for just Ohio, we've got that in there now. So after the install, we can come over here. We actually have our directory folder. We actually have an uninstall program now, so you can actually uninstall the software like you would any other piece of software. The local folder with a README file that talks about what local's used for, projects, README file talks about what project folder's used for, and then our standards folder. And then we even included the standards update doc there. And then I talked about this ODOT folder. We're going to have training, utilities, source, even project tools. So like the GenSum, Ashtray, DBA, spreadsheet, some of the other things, create new project, that's a VBA that we have for creating projects, just various other things, and the documentation to go along with it. And then when you do a local install, we wanted the system to be configured for all users. So we just created a folder called users that defaults. So anybody that logs in, it defaults to this folder. So you have our UCFs here, and then we talked about we created a folder for just the user preferences, which would be the docking, the task navigation, UPF file. That was one of the other things that we had issues with was user preference files getting corrupted. Apparently Bentley has a couple variables that you can set that actually help clean those up during the process of running MicroStation, and we didn't have those. So that was something we actually added. Function keys for function key menus. button assignments for mouse button assignments. I don't think anybody uses digitizing tablets anymore, but you know, some people like the middle mouse button as the tentative point. Some people like the middle mouse button as the pan. And then AccuDraw. I guess AccuDraw, they actually have settings for AccuDraw now that you can store in an XML format. So as part of that install, if you come to all programs now, you'll have a folder here, just like any other application, ODOT CADD standards. And you'll have some groups underneath there for like documentation. So we have, one of the things we have under there is the survey PDF, talks about the initial release of when we initially released all the survey open road stuff. KDIG, Geopack, just various other documentation types. VBA documentation. Geopack Road, got all of our criteria files in there for the time being until Bentley decides they're not going to support criteria anymore, but we have it there. Project tools, same thing. Just pointers straight to those utilities. And then we're also going to do some scripts in the background. A lot of the times we'll get support calls from people that say, hey, my preferences is screwed up, or I'm having issues with my user preferences, and then we said, well, we got to go to the home folder, you got to delete the UPF file, and there was a lot of calls that we get that we just have to go through this process, and we just wanted to create some scripting that says reset your MicroStation preferences, so it goes out there and it cleans up those files. New user setup. If you're a new user, you just had MicroStation installed, and you don't have that home folder maybe on a network drive, like we use our W drive for a network drive. Hey, you're a new user, set it up, copy that Bentley SS3 folder out there with all the config files. And then another thing that we wanted to do, Geopack likes to create resource files on the temp folder, and we actually had that pointing to the temp folder. And a lot of the times we have support calls for Geopack. It's just, they're random problems, whether it's a dialogue missing or a dialogue off the screen or something just crashing. It's just a simple clean of those local resource files on the temp folder, and it usually would clean it up about 80% of the time. Well, a lot of users don't know that. So we wanted to do a script that would actually run that for the user. So, you know, hey, just go out here, click this, it'll clean up the resource files for you. So kind of a one-stop shop. And then also the uninstaller package there. If you want to take those off, you just run that. It runs a clean on it. It removes everything. Some of the research items, I get questions like this. Yeah. Yeah, okay. The ODOT CADD standard folder structure setup. Yeah. Going to be run as a power user. I would think so if they have write permissions to the local machine. I know that might be an issue, but yeah, you're talking for the local install or the client install? Okay. Saying some of the executables can't run. Yeah, that's something that, I'm sorry? Yeah. Well, this is something, we're actually, the administrative access on some of the local machines are actually getting pulled from us right now too, so this is something that we'll probably have to overcome as well. So we're going to be doing some testing with it. Yeah, I mean, it depends on really what you're doing on the local machine. You know, if you want to have that, you know, installed so they have access to those directly, I mean, that's something that you could certainly do. If it's something that the users know where the network drive is, they know where the standards are, and you just want to refresh it and just do that server installation and not really do anything on the client, you can certainly do that as well. Yeah. Trying to eject that, right. Yeah, if the local user does not have write access, right. Any other questions? Wow, where did we get more than that? Moving on. Research items. Some of the things that our section has actually been involved with, but we really haven't conveyed any of that or communicated any of that with the consultants. FHWA, Everyday Counts Initiative. Anybody familiar with that? Yes, good. This is something that we got involved with, it's been probably a year ago, because Dan initially got involved with it when he was the CAD manager. This kind of got passed to me when I was appointed the CAD manager last year. This is just an FHWA initiative to help state DOTs develop or get on track to develop 3D engineered models for construction moving forward. And this is something that they want to help support AMG, which is Automated Machine Guidance for construction. And that's kind of the direction that we're moving in with the Open Roads technology. Creating those 3D models, surfaces, line strings, electronic deliverables for construction. We actually have an EDC team. Dave here? Barna? No? He signed up. He's with E.L. Robinson. They're actually partnering with us and a couple contractors as part of this EDC team. We actually met last month for our second or third meeting to talk about the project that's actually been selected. E.L. Robinson actually has a project currently right now that they're actually working on and developing 3D model deliverables. XML files for the alignments, random XML files for like the terrain models, surfaces. And that's something that we've been kind of working on as far as like, what deliverables we want to give for the contractors. The details of that and then the workflow involved. PennDOT workshop. I actually attended a PennDOT workshop 2 weeks ago. FHWA partnered with PennDOT and did a full workshop. It was 2 days. Well, it was a day and a half. The first day was just nothing but presentations from contractors, consultants, and then some other DOTs. Like Michigan DOT was represented there. Iowa DOT did a presentation. PennDOT I actually was there. There was a couple other DOTs that actually presented there as well, that they're kind of moving forward with this Everyday Counts initiative. That's something that we're working on right now, and as part of that initiative is our moving forward with the open road stuff. The whole modeling concept of 3D, which Eric will definitely get into in the afternoon. That's one of the things that we're working on right now. There is actually a website for all of this information if you want to go out there and check it out. I actually provided a link in the PowerPoint. This is off of the Federal Highways website. There's different groups here involved, construction, post-construction, survey, and then they actually have webinar series that you can actually go out and watch from the FHWA website. So here's like a whole series of things, talks about like visualization, right-of-way acquisition, roadway visual. I mean, there's a lot of different things here. So if you want to, go check that out. Kentucky, this actually is a special note that they've added in their journal notes that talks about the 3D design model, the concept of it, that they're actually including as part of their notes now. So we'll get the PowerPoint up there if you want to go check that out at your convenience. We'll make it available. Project-wise, this is something that ODOT has been talking about trying to implement or at least do a pilot on for quite some time. And we realized that actually some of the consultants have already adopted it and are moving forward with it. We are currently right now trying to get a pilot, and that's something that we're actually going to have a demonstration. I think Bentley's coming in to do a demonstration in September. Consultant services is actually going to be part of that as well because they're looking for some type of a document management system, and ProjectWise actually is a document management system in itself, but also allows for CAD files and the referencing and stuff like that. So consultant services is actually going to be part of that with us. Standard project folder structure. The CAD manual, we have stated our project folder structure, county, PID, and then a folder structure for support files for a project. This has been something in the districts. It's been about 10 years since we really went back and took a hard look at how the folder structure was originally, and then what we could do to make it better. And then, as Rachel had mentioned before, we've gotten the districts kind of involved again with our CAD meetings, and one of the big pushes right now, at least from Jim Barna, is continuity across all districts. If I go to District 5 and I want to find a file, and I want to go to District 11 and I want to find a similar file, there's no difference. I go to a folder and I go to the project and then I find the file that I'm looking for. That's not the case. We just have not practiced that at a district level. And when I was at District 5, the initial conception of this project folder structure with the CAD standards, we actually adopted our own before there was even a published one. And when they eventually published one, we never really took that and said, look, we need to convert, we need to change. We just kind of stayed with our own thing. And a lot of the districts have done that over the years. And they've either done their own thing or they didn't do anything. So we're finding that every district has kind of their own folder structure for projects. So to find anything, it's very difficult. So we saw a need to have that revised, taken a hard look at, get some buy-in from the districts, and we're actually going to form a committee. We're asking the P&E managers and the design engineers to appoint one person, whether it be a project manager or a CAD manager or somebody that deals with the project structure at a district, be involved. And we're going to come together, take a look at the standard folder structure, make some refinements to it, and make it a standard. And the districts have to have buy-in, and they will start to follow it. It's as simple as that. And that kind of couples with the ProjectWise thing. We want to try to get on track with that internally as an agency to help with the ProjectWise implementation if and when it comes. Right now, we don't really have a timeline for it. I think the major reason is we don't have the money available. We're asking for it. Just a quick note: we have a technology council now that basically takes a look at different IT projects, and then they either say yes, this is a go, or no, it's not. We're going to try to push that through the technology council to get some buy-in. And if we can get some buy-in and get some funds freed up, then that will be something that we move forward with as a pilot and work with, hopefully, consultant services or maybe another department and implement, start to work on a project. One of the things that we've had in the districts was archives, old project archives that are scanned images. And we developed, well, I shouldn't say we, District 6 developed a VBA to help structure all those files. Well, they're not really supporting that VBA anymore, and eventually it's going to break. And when that breaks, how are we going to find files? How are we going to, create some way that we can use a system to go back and find files, whether it be archive files or current design files. And we're hoping ProjectWise might help us kind of better filter that. I talked to the CAD manager at Michigan DOT at the PennDOT workshop. She actually gave a presentation. They've been using ProjectWise for 10 years, and they're going full paperless next year. Tablets, and everybody in the agency that's in the field has a tablet. They'll access ProjectWise and every single file for that project in the field on a tablet. That's where I would like to see ODOT get eventually. They did a whole presentation, and it was pretty amazing. They're doing a lot of stuff up there. ODOT True Type fonts. This is something that we've always had, that MicroStation resource file that just doesn't mesh well with Excel. And Excel likes True Type fonts. So we've had an issue going from KDIG to MicroStation back and forth. And then in the development of some of the spreadsheets that we have, we're using just standard True Type fonts like Arial, New, things like that. And we want to take the ODOT resource fonts that we have in MicroStation right now and redesign them or develop them in a True Type font format. That's something that when Don from Bentley was here, I actually tasked him with. He took a look, and MicroStation actually takes the font resource file, creates a True Type font on the fly when you're using your text styles, and then it uses that as part of the fonts. But the True Type font that it creates it's garbage from what I understand. So we're actually looking at taking the resource font, overlaying those within a True Type font builder, and then basically rebuilding the fonts from scratch. And then delivering those as an ODOT standard so they can be used in MicroStation or Excel or Word or any other application that supports True Type fonts, so we can kind of streamline our fonts. Either that, or we're going to adopt a True Type font. But I don't know if anybody's messed with True Type fonts in MicroStation, but they look bold. When you pull a True Type font in to try to do text, they're very thick. So we wanted to kind of take a look and see, well, can we use this? Can we not use this? FDOT, Florida DOT actually has their own set of True Type fonts that they've developed. So we kind of looked at that, thought, maybe that might be something we want to do. So that's something that we're looking at doing or researching. Print organizer for PDF printing, iPlot replacement. We have iPlot we use internally at a majority of districts. And we pay for licenses for each one of those servers. And we pay for clients for each one of those passports. iPlot it's a cost for us. And we've talked to Bentley, and Bentley has actually told us that they're actually taking the iPlot organizer client and print organizer client in Bentley, and they're slowly kind of bringing them together. So we're looking at actually just phasing out iPlot and going straight to print organizer for PDF printing. That's something else that I don't know if anybody's aware, but we released. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Right. Yeah, that's something that we're actually working on right now. We've got a couple config files set up. We're actually looking at doing it's almost like a template with bookmarks in it, and the bookmarks are actually set up just like the LND Volume 3. So you can just drag your DGN files into the section that you want, and then it pre-populates it, and then when you print the PDF, it's a multi-page, and then the bookmarks are actually injected in there so you can go to the different sections of a plan, like cross sections or whatever. That's something that it's an ongoing thing that we're looking at. I think we're going to. Yeah, that's what a lot of consultants are doing. And it's one of those things that we realize that there's something there. PDFs, obviously, people like to work with those. They're easier. The viewers, it's free. We knew that it was coming. The contractors want it. They want PDFs. Initially, we talked about doing single PDFs, and then we talked about doing multi-page PDFs. So there's been some discussion there. One of the contractors said they like multi-page, but they don't want anything over 10 megabytes because it's hard to use in the field. Well, you get a 1,000-page plan. It's over 10 megabytes. We actually put one together. Well, how many pages? 1,000? A couple thousand pages, and how big was it? Almost a gig PDF. So yeah, I don't think you want to use that in the field. So yeah, there's going to be some refinements there. That's something that we're actually working on for configuration that we're going to probably be pushing out here, probably in the next release or so. Yeah. The backwards compatibility stuff. Yeah. Yeah, because there's a setting in MicroStation when you print to tell it what version of PDF. Right, and that was something else because you can inject levels into it. There's various different things you can inject engineering links into your PDFs. I mean, there's a lot of things. Even the iModel stuff, you're supposed to be able to do 3D PDFs. But yeah, we realize that there is a size variation there depending on what at the end of the day what you want in the PDF. The main thing we hear right now is, at least from the contractor standpoint, is we want a multi-page PDF with vector graphics because they're taking those PDFs and they're taking it into TBC or whatever other software that they're using. They're taking those vector graphics, they're making cross sections, and then they're blowing it into templates to create a surface out of it. That was the big concern there. They want vector graphics, but with a PDF vector graphics, you're going to get a smaller file. It just depends on smart elements that you inject into that PDF, and then it grows in size. Yeah. That's a very good question. Initially, I think that we want to do vector graphics because we're not there yet with the 3D technology. I think thinking long-term here, visionary, I think the model is going to be the legal binding document. You're going to have a surface model that's going to be the proposed ground, and that'll be the document. That'll be at this point, we just want to get to a supplemental deliverable that says here, take this, use it at your convenience, use it at, do that little legal disclaimer. But just as an electronic deliverable supplemental data, whether it be land XML format or an iModel format or some other format for a terrain surface model. So I think we're going to get there eventually, but in the beginning, I think the vector graphics is probably going to be where we start, because at some point I'd like to see plan sheets go away and just make everything electronic. I think we're going to get there eventually. I don't know if I'll see it in my career at ODOT, but I'd like to see it get there eventually. Well, especially with paperless. I mean, what MDOT's doing with paperless. things in the field. They're using tablets. I mean, okay, we bring up a 3D model, we rotate it, we orient it, we click on it, we get the quantities for that. What do we need plan sheets for? Get in. Well, yeah, I mean, the graphics, they are coming from the DGN files, but a lot of the contractors don't have MicroStation. That's our problem. They don't support DGN. They want a way to import graphics into their CAD pack, or not their CAD package, but whatever software they're using, whether it be TerraModel or TBC or some other, byproduct of their AMG equipment. Right. So what they're doing is they're taking the PDF in there with their cross sections. They're tagging, the proposed surface, and then they're saying, okay, this is at whatever station. And then they're going to the next one, they're tagging it. See, right now they're hand drafting over the TIFF images. Or if it's a PDF scanned in, and it's basically a TIFF that's converted to PDF, they're not vector graphics, they're just raster graphics, so they're still drawing over it. So, yeah, I understand what you're saying. I think the iModel, Rachel had mentioned, she was at the TRB last week. Trimble actually announced that they're going to partner with Bentley to try to leverage the iModel within the TBC software. And so you should be able to just go into MicroStation, take an iModel out into, whether it be TBC or some other software, and then just generate your service from that. But just out of some of the things that we talked about at the PennDOT workshop, they're seeing surfaces. See, we do end area surfaces right now, end area calculations off of our cross sections, and they're seeing up to a 10% difference just off end area volumes. When they're actually doing existing proposed surface calculations, volume differences, they're getting within 2%. I'd like to see that eventually. And I think this 3D engineering models is going to get us there. Bentley Learn custom learning paths for training. We actually have a Bentley Learn subscription as part of our ELS agreement with Bentley. They've told us several times that we will be able to customize our learning paths specific for ODOT training. So that's one of the things that we're looking at doing is once we develop our in-house training, possibly creating a learning path for it on the Bentley Learn server. Auto turn and guide sign is something I touched on at the beginning. We use AutoTrack internally right now, and AutoTrack was recently acquired by Autodesk. And we were told from day one that Autodesk wasn't going to support AutoTrack as a Bentley product anymore. So we started to look at other software packages such as AutoTurn, and then AutoTurn and GuideSight are actually manufactured by the same company. So we were actually looking at maybe doing a package deal because we've been looking at possibly a different signing package to get away from what we're doing right now with VBA that we're supporting internally. So that's something that we're looking at right now. We haven't made the purchase yet, but it's just kind of one of those ongoing research things that we're looking at. VBA for sheet numbering. This is something that we've talked about doing for a long time, but we just haven't done it. Sheet numbering has just been one of those things that we've just had a tough time dealing with in MicroStation. You got 1,000 pages, and you got to insert pages, and now your sheet numbers are all messed up, and then your references for your plan and profile sheets aren't matching, and so we wanted to take a look. And actually, Eric's got a proof of concept already that he's developed for actually injecting page numbers onto our cells, either as an overlay or as kind of a smart element. What was that? Data blocks. So for sheet numbering. And that's something that we're going to look at probably a little bit more, but I think it really depends on what we do for ProjectWise. ProjectWise actually, we've been told has the capability of doing some of that within it. We don't know to what extent. But if we do eventually do project-wise and it's something that we can't, get going right away, this is something that we may turn to and actually do something internally to kind of leverage that sheet numbering and maybe build some of the spreadsheet, interfaces with it. That's something else that I actually didn't put on here, but something else that I want to try to do is try to do some more spreadsheet building, kind of like we did with the general summary thing. And I'm hitting John up for that one. He's been kind of the go-to guy. CAD Services Dashboard, this is kind of early concept. It's basically an HTA, which is just a little script. It's one icon, you run it, and it gives you a little, almost a mini website of applications or documentation. It's basically a one-stop shop. You double-click, it opens. You can go to training and then look at the training stuff. It's got web links, things like that. So just something, like I said, it's an early concept, something that we're looking at possibly doing as part of the CAD standards. Twitter account, this is something that I just hit Rachel up the other day. I don't know, whether there's any legal ramifications, but we're looking at possibly doing a Twitter account for our section. So if we do, CAD updates, supplemental updates, the website link breaks, something that we can just kind of quickly tweet, say, hey, here's a known issue, something like that. Proof of concept, something we're looking at, Twitter. YouTube channel for training videos, something else that we talked about doing. Right now we have a lot of our training videos local, and then we're also trying to look at the Bentley communities. This is just one other avenue that we're possibly looking at doing some training videos on. ODOT hosted CAD training for consultants. This is something that we actually talked about doing a while ago, and we need to take a better look at it. I know we do some training. Is Brett here? You guys do right-of-way training right now? Yeah, they got training right now for right-of-way for the consultants. Something that we're actually looking at doing internally, hosting it here, having the consultants come in. I don't know if there's fees attached to that. I don't know how that works. No? Okay. Something that we're going to take a look at. Just for future reference, that might be something, if you go to the website, you might actually see one day where we're going to host a training. I know this is kind of a training session, but I'm talking sit down at a computer and point and click and actually do the work. Open sourcing ODOT VBAs. Then I got the little with exceptions on there. This is something, we have a lot of VBAs that we support, and we've supported over the years. And we realize that not all of them are being utilized. And that's something that I actually tasked Greg with the other day is we're looking at putting a survey together, whether it be on SurveyMonkey or some other avenue, for input from the consultants, because some people internally use the VBAs and some people don't, but I think there's a lot of consultants out there that use our VBAs that we may not know. So we're going to put something together and try to get a consensus on what VBAs we should try to maintain and keep, and then which ones we should just retire and stop supporting. Because as technology, as we move forward with open roads, a lot of this stuff is just going to go by the wayside, and if it's not something that we're going to continue to want to support, we're just going to let it go and then make it public, open source. You can take it and use it as your convenience, modify it, whatever. That's something that we're looking at doing. So if with the website, that's one thing we're actually going to possibly send out, maybe as a Twitter feed or something like that. Hey, here's a survey. Please go out, take the survey. Let us know what VBAs you're using, which ones aren't. Just real quick, I don't know if many of you know, last year we actually added, it was an executive decision to accept Autodesk as part of deliverables for CAD. This was actually injected into the Volume 3, Section 1503. Basically says that ODOT will not provide support, standard documentation, or guidance of any kind with respect for delivering using Autodesk tools, but if you want to deliver Autodesk native files, DWG, and PDFs, we will accept them. and similar documentation also updated and put into the cloud. And I'm actually running just a little bit behind. I didn't know I'd take that. John Durst.